Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to this parallel session of the new topic, the Energy Communities Facility topic under the call 2023 under Life Clean Energy Transition Program. Like in other sessions, if I can have the agenda, please. Like in other sessions, we will start with a policy presentation with colleagues from DG Energy that will set up a bit the framework, the policy framework where we are operating. And then we will follow the presentation with the topic-specific presentation with a colleague responsible for the topic in CENEA, which will give us all the details about this new topic on the Energy Community Facility. So the topic, we no need to slide the questions yet, please. We go back to the, sorry, could we go back to the agenda? Yeah. Yes, sorry. So it's a quite, just to let you know that it's a quite a new topic. So it's a new topic, not quite a new topic. It's a new topic, a completely new topic this year. It's a bit a different animal from other topics on the live set. So I just ask you to pay special attention to the presentation of Talia Brun when she will present all the details, because it's not a traditional live set topic as such. And for those of you who were maybe familiar to the previous topics on energy communities that we have in 2021 and 2022, this is a different topic. So we have a break from the more traditional energy communities topic that we have supported in the past this year, and we focus on the Energy Communities Facility. So for those of you who are familiar with the previous topic, please pay attention, because it's not a similar topic. So we don't expect resubmissions of previous proposals from last year in this year call, because there's nothing to do with what we were expecting to support last year to compare to this year. And following the presentation from Talia, we'll have also, of course, a question and answer session through Slido. So basically what you can do is to go to slido.com, and then you have to select a specific room. So in this case, is the Energy Communities Facility room topic. And there you can post up your questions. You can also vote for the questions that you think are more relevant or more important for you. And we'll try to answer most of them if we have the time. And also, if not, of course, you can also send the questions via the functional mailbox of LiveSet, and we'll try to answer them as soon as we can. So that's all from my side. I think it's a quite interesting session for a very nice and different topic. So, I mean, I hope that you will get all the information on this new topic. And then I'll just pass the floor to our colleague from DG Ener. We have with us Vera Kissler. She's working in DG Energy in the unit working with the RES policy, renewable policy, in DG Energy, and she will present us the policy background on energy communities, what is there in the Renewables Energy Directive. Thanks a lot, Vera. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the introduction. I'm here with my colleague Ashil Hanoset from the Unit B1. We will share this presentation. Next slide, please. To give just a general image of where we are going with the energy transition, this is a nice illustration that the future energy system will be, of course, more decarbonized, most of all, but also more decentralized and consumer-centered. And this is where the energy communities play a big role, also in the digitalization and integration of the energy system, given the wide scope of activities that they can engage in. Next slide, please. And the Clean Energy Package of 2018 empowered the consumers, put them at the heart of the clean energy transition with the purpose of mobilizing private capital for the energy transition, to enhance the public acceptance of new projects, and to increase flexibility in the market, but also to transform consumers into energy citizens by involving them actively in energy decision-making through energy communities. Next slide, please. So in the Renewable Energy Directive and the Electricity Directive, we have two models of energy communities, as you probably all know. And in general, the consumer empowerment is at 3 levels: the individual level with the active customer concept, then the jointly acting active customers at the building or beyond the building level, and finally the energy communities, which can take the form of renewable energy communities as defined in the Renewable Energy Directive, dealing with all types of renewable energy, having a more local character, and the citizen energy communities, which are defined in the Electricity Directive, and they so far can only deal with electricity and all types of electricity. Next slide. So these two models have in common that they should be integrated in the market. There should be procedures and tariffs and activities adapted to them not to be discriminated against. But given the more local and non-professional character of renewable energy communities, these benefit from additional privileges. Namely, member states are asked to give them easier access to financial instruments and into information, to customize support schemes for renewable energy communities, to remove unjustified barriers, and to support also public authorities with regulatory and capacity building measures. Next slide. Right now, our policy priority, of course, is the Repower EU package of last year, the EU's reaction to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the need to become independent of imported Russian fossil fuels as soon as possible. The next slide, please. The energy communities play a crucial role here as well. Next slide, please. Because they, of course, help citizens to produce clean energy and to save energy as well by providing energy efficiency services or increasing consumer consciousness of energy use. The self-consumption schemes also help to secure access to affordable energy, including for low-income households. So this is really an important contribution to the objectives of Repower EU. Next slide. So the energy communities are in fact affected by all the different initiatives of the Repower EU package. The EU Safe Energy Communication and the EU Solar Strategy in particular. I will go in more detail on the solar strategy in a moment. But also the electricity market design with the proposal that followed this year, which aims to accelerate the transition and to ensure access to low-cost renewables to all consumers, the biomethane action plan, and last but not least, the permitting recommendation and the related proposal in the Renewable Energy Directive to ease permit granting, grid connection, and licensing procedures. Next slide. So to zoom in on the EU Solar Strategy, which was presented in May last year, the key element here for the call which we are talking about today is the proposal to set up an energy communities facility by 2024. So this call is implementing this action of the EU Solar Energy Strategy, and Talia will go in much more detail on what it is all about. The aspiration or the political ambition of the strategy is to have at least one renewables-based energy community in every municipality with a population higher than 10,000 by 2025. So it is really crucial to provide the adequate support for this to happen. And another element which is important of the EU solar strategy is the mandatory installation of rooftop solar energy on certain types of buildings. This is currently being discussed between the co-legislators in the framework of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And next slide, please. This solar energy strategy also asks or calls on member states to take certain actions for energy communities, given their non-professional character, their lack of time, financing, and technical expertise, as also asked by the directive, by the way. Member states should assess and remove unjustified barriers, simplify and ease the licensing and permitting procedures for energy communities. In the best case, they would propose a one-stop shop to facilitate the access to financing and information, and make use of flexibilities provided by the state aid guidelines to support specifically the setup of energy communities. And with this, I think I will hand over to my colleague Achille. Next slide, please.
Yes, thank you, Vera. Next slide, please. So from the Commission side, we have currently two projects running. The Energy Communities Repository and the Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub. Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub focuses on rural energy communities. They are collecting best practices in this regard, publishing guidance documents. How can farmers, municipalities be involved in energy communities, for example, but also an overview of relevant technologies and which one to choose depending on the area and actor configuration and financing means an initiative can have at their disposal. Of course, a series of technical assistance instances to rural energy communities to help them at the early development stage to set up a communication campaign in order to do certain feasibility studies or to get a financing strategy developed or a business plan. The idea here is that this is done by experts that are contracted by the advisory hub. Of course, in contrast with the facility, what we would be providing is cascade funding. So the energy communities would have the budget to procure such services on the market themselves freely, of course, with some quality control attached to that by the contractor and DG Ener and CET. And then, of course, building a network, trying to get all of the relevant stakeholders, interested parties, and energy communities within one little bubble where they can learn from each other and potentially professionalize and scale up the energy community movement, let's say. Next slide, please. The Energy Communities Repository, so in parallel with the Advisory Hub, has some policy components to it. So there we're looking at enabling frameworks per member state. We are mapping barriers and action drivers for energy communities. And we will also be creating a roadmap for member states that are struggling to implement the EU directives as we speak. Again, technical assistance focused on energy communities in urban areas and also attached to that a database of existing energy communities and an impact assessment of energy communities, hopefully in a way that we can quantify the data and move beyond case-by-case examples. Next slide, please. So then Vera already mentioned it. There's quite a bit in Repower EU that is relevant to energy communities. And the reform of the electricity market design is no exception in this regard. And there was overall a rather large call for facilitating the connection of production installations with the consumption profiles of the members of the energy communities. And this is also facilitated by further operationalizing and clarifying the roles, responsibility, and rights related to the activity of energy sharing. Next slide, please. So here you can see how energy sharing through an energy community would look like: collective investment, setup of a legal entity, having production installations in ownership of the community, and then subsequently sharing the electricity within a time interval no longer than the imbalance settlement period. Of course, this is not the only use case that we're enabling with the electricity market design. We're also providing the opportunity for neighbors to share electricity with each other, or for more informal structures to collectively self-consume electricity. And that's with that, I think we captured everything that you need to know. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Vera and Achille. Sorry for not introducing you, Achille, before. So thanks for the policy overview and also for presenting us some of the initiatives that you are managing that are relevant for energy communities. We'll have also some time after Talia's presentation for question and answer sessions for our colleagues in DG Energy as well. So please use the Slido website, and I will call you the Slido hashtag that you have to use, or hashtag EU Live 23. And if you use it, then you can already put your questions and vote for the ones. I saw that there are already 3 questions, but we will wait after Talia's presentation to go through the Slido questions. So now I would like to introduce Talia Broom. She's a project advisor at CINEA. She's responsible for the area of work on energy communities, and she will present us the new topic on the energy community facility and what it makes it a different animal, a bit special to the more traditional life clean energy transition topics. So Talia, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria. So good afternoon, everybody. So as Maria said, we are quite excited to present this new topic this year. We believe it's going to be an important initiative in the area of energy communities that can really change the energy community landscape in some of the member states. So one warning, perhaps something that is that is very different in these topics from the ones that you may have been listening to earlier today, is that the whole budget will go to a single consortium. So we are trying, with this call, we are trying to select one consortium that will implement this structure. We don't want to create several facilities, but only one, and that's very specific to this topic. So let's start. Let's dive a little bit into the text, maybe. Next slide. Not this one. Could you go forward? Yeah. Go forward once. No. Okay. No. Next. I think this is the wrong version of the slides, but it's not a problem. Okay. Well, okay, so here I was going to introduce the concept of energy communities, but I think Vera and Ashil have done a great job doing so. I would just mention that basically, as you all know, different member states are at different stages with regards to the transposition of the 2 definitions that we have, the renewable energy communities and the citizen energy communities. And also they are at different levels of maturity regarding the implementation of enabling frameworks for those communities. So as you know, those directives basically ask the member states to create regulatory, legal, policy frameworks that would allow energy communities to compete with other actors in the energy market, creating a level playing field with them. And some countries have been very proactive and already have bespoke support mechanisms, but it's not the case all across the continent. So basically this topic, the facility, will try to address this kind of also this geographical imbalance regarding the level of support for communities. Maybe next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So basically, we have identified that there's maybe a particularly sensitive phase in the energy community project development kind of timeline, which is the pre-development phase. So this is when the early community members gather and define and kind of come up with a project idea. After that, there is this phase in which they need to define whether there is whether the idea that they have is feasible, first of all, and also fund some early studies. In some context, this phase is supported. Communities find professional advice. They are able to raise funds to fund this pre-development work. And in other contexts, project ideas are just simply abandoned because of the lack of support structure for those early phases or the difficulty of raising funds to generate business plans. So the idea of the facility would be to address this and try to support project ideas up to the project development phase. Next slide. Yeah, previous slide, please. You skip to, yeah, okay, thanks. So that's part of the challenge. The second challenge that the facility would like to address is basically the fact that as you know, there are some really good examples, some communities that are being successful across the continent as well. And there's a need to share those examples, share those best practices, and also to get those early movers, those kind of successful communities to support other communities. Part of that is already is at the moment, as Achille mentioned, being done by the Energy Communities Repository and also by the Rural Energy Communities Advisory Hub. But we would like the facility to take the relay of those activities and basically continue those kind of actions. So maybe next slide to sum up. Basically, we would like to create a structure that makes the success of project ideas less dependent on the income level of the community members or on the availability of local support for energy communities, and also an initiative that basically takes the relay of the two key initiatives that we have at the moment, which are RECA and the repository. Next slide. So um, as I said, we would like to focus on the pre-development phase, and we would like to create a structure that is able to to offer support services that take communities from the project idea to having a solid business plan, and then our work stops. So we hope to be able to kind of to bridge from the project idea to the project development phase. And then projects with that solid business plan will need to go seek financial support, seek technical implementation partners, etc., and then move on with the project. So we will only support that early phase. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the facility will deliver 2 levels of support. The first one is a pre-screening phase or a pre-screening check, and this will be done by a network of dedicated experts. And these dedicated experts in the proposal, basically you will need to demonstrate that these dedicated experts are able to assess project ideas and their feasibility, taking into account the local context. So you could have one expert per member state, or you could have some experts that cover several member states, but if so, then you would need to argue or demonstrate that those experts are capable of really assessing the specific context of those ideas. And then once a project idea has gone through the pre-screening and it's considered feasible, applicants would move to a second phase. If you are familiar perhaps with the EU CET facility, this would be a structure. The second phase looks a bit like the type of support that the EU CET facility is now delivering. So it would be a phase in which we would give small lump sum grants to third parties so that they can then contract services to produce those business plans. So it's a financial support to third parties phase. Next slide. Well, maybe before I move on to the next slide, just these 2 phases that I just mentioned. Could you go back to slides? Yes, one more. Yeah, these two levels of support that you see here should basically amount to at least 70%. So at least 70% of the overall budget should be devoted to these 2. That's an important thing to bear in mind. So most of the budget of the facility should be devoted to direct support. And then another important idea perhaps to keep in mind is that we would like both of these levels of support to focus on renewable energy communities and citizen energy communities, or initiatives that aim at qualifying as any of the 2 concepts, basically. Next slide. You will see in the text that there are some precisions regarding, first of all, what you need to define for the kind of regarding the types of activities, the type of actors that would be beneficiaries of this financial support to third parties. So you would have to take care of those and describe those items that you see on the left in your proposals. And on the right, you see that there's some elements that are predefined in the text regarding the components of the business plan. So it's a very classical structure, so technical analysis, legal analysis, engagement strategy, financing options. These are kind of, most of it is very common sense. You could add some sections, and this is just a list of the minimum items that those business plans would need to contain. Of course, to develop those business plans, some communities may need to work on complementary studies, and that would be kind of would be able to, could be financed by these grants too. Next. Uh, Along with these two levels of support, we would expect that the network of dedicated experts would also deliver some help desk services. So these help desks would be able to deliver ad hoc advice. So there will be calls from applicants to financial support regarding how to apply, what is it for, whether their community is eligible, all this, and there should be some help desk where these questions would be addressed. They would also have, this help desk would also have the role of promoting the facility and making sure it reaches the pertinent stakeholders. In some context, it may be necessary also, could you please go back one slide? Yeah, it would be necessary to train local actors, perhaps the contractors delivering the business plans, or even communities. So some of that work could be done by the help desk. And the help desk could also help, notably, the selected grantees, so the parties that will receive those small lump sums. It could help them basically contracting the necessary expertise to develop their business plans. And of course, at the end, the help desk could also take care of quality control. Next slide. Now, along with the kind of the two levels of support, so this is just like could you go back one slide? Yeah, I think you skipped one. Yeah. So along with the two levels of support and the help desk, there will be some complementary activities. The first one is very classical, so monitoring, analysis, and capitalization of results. That's, as for any project, we want you to check what are the impacts that your project is having. The second part, as I already mentioned, would be to maintain and expand certain parts of the legacy of the RECA and the repository. And if you read the text, you will see that there are two that are mentioned there. One would be the stakeholder networks created, and the other one would be the data collection for the impact assessment. But you could also identify other outputs of those two initiatives that you would want to continue if you wish. And then there would be also some activities related to ensuring that there's best practice sharing and peer-to-peer exchanges. And finally, we would expect the facility to keep an eye to monitor basically the emergence of services delivering technical assistance and training for energy communities across the continent, to ensure that whatever the facilities delivering remains complementary to enabling mechanisms at the national level and exploits all the potential synergies. Next slide. So this is just a summary slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just a summary, as you can see. So there are two levels of support: direct support, one help desk, and then some complementary activities. Next slide. Yeah, so what type of consortium are we looking for? So first, you will need to demonstrate in your proposal that you have an in-depth understanding of energy communities and their needs and challenges. Second, that you have some technical expertise related to sustainable energy that would allow you to really deliver quality services to the communities. And then you would also need to, and this is quite important in the context of this call, you would also need to demonstrate that your consortium has the capacity to run a large-scale financial support scheme according to EU standards, which means that you would really need to demonstrate that you are capable of creating processes that really ensure transparency, confidentiality, equal treatment, and also absence of conflict of interest. And this is very important that you develop on why are you capable of doing this in your proposal. Finally, it's also very crucial that you also are able to show in the proposal that you can mobilize a critical mass of potential energy communities. And this basically means that you need to outline a very inclusive outreach strategy that really reaches different types of communities, of geographical areas, different types of technologies, etc., so that really you don't select one model, but really try to address the different possibilities that energy communities can have. This slide is a common slide. If you've been in other topic presentations, you've already seen it. Basically, it explains you that in all proposals, you need to consider three types of indicators when you look at impacts. One are topic specific indicators, and those are in the topic text. That's very straightforward. There's also in the topic text, you can also find common indicators, which are indicators that are equal in all the life, clean energy transition topics. So that is very clear, but that you can also add some activity specific indicators, and those you will not find in the text, but you are encouraged, depending on the type of activities that you then plan, to add some indicators that really allow you to reflect all the impacts that your activities plan to achieve. And as you know, for all the impacts, you will need to quantify them at the end of the project and also 5 years later. And you will also need to be very transparent in the way that you have calculated them. So ideally, you show what was there before, what are your assumptions, and how you reach to the levels, how would you reach the levels that you're targeting in your proposal. This is quite important. As you know, impacts in live CET have a higher weight. When you look at the different assessment criteria, impact is the one that has the highest weight. So please take this section of impact quantification as seriously as it should be taken, because it's a crucial one. Next slide, please. So now let's look at the impacts that we would like all project proponents to define. You would need to quantify the number of business plans that you would aim at delivering, also the number of energy communities that you would like to support for every for every level of support that you have defined, and also how diverse those communities are. And that's hard, but you can kind of try to deliver some estimates as to the types of communities that you would reach. You would also need to quantify or try to quantify the energy communities that having received support are in operation at the end of the project, and also 5 years down the line, and also the number of citizens that are engaged in energy community projects. Finally, the last kind of topic-specific indicator are investments in renewable energies and energy efficiency triggered by the project. You know that triggered in the context of live CET means that the investment decision has been taken, not that the kind of the installation of the capacity is already there. It's about the investment decision. And now here you have three other common impact indicators that you would need to quantify: renewable energy generation triggered by the project, primary energy savings, and also the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And those you would need to provide estimates for in your proposals. Next slide. Yeah, so now a few considerations, just if we've convinced you that it's an interesting topic to apply to, some considerations that we would like you to make when writing your proposals. First, on budget preparation. So as you know, I already mentioned that the estimated budget for this call are 10 million. And as you know, Live CET has a 95% co-financing rate. Within that co-financing, there is a 7% flat rate for indirect costs. So it's 7% of the direct costs are automatically calculated as indirect costs. And this flat rate is calculated on direct cost, but direct cost includes personnel costs, purchases, subcontracting, and also the direct support to third parties. And that, when you do your calculations, it may be relevant to know that it's considering also financial support to third parties, that flat rate. The second point I've already mentioned, the direct support should be at least 70% of the overall grant. The lump sums that you would be handing out in the facility would be between 0 and 60,000 euros. And it's for you to define what level within that range you decide to set the. I mean, it can be that all are the same, that you have several different types of grants. It's up to you to define, but the limit would always be 60K per individual third party. And then there is, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, there is a scheme trying to explain what would be the grant payment schedule that we would suggest. And this is, of course, to be discussed with the awarded consortium. But what would be the grants payment schedule that we think would be the most feasible for you? And that would be that we would basically, at pre-financing stage, so at the beginning of the grant, we would give you at the very beginning 30% of the overall grant. You would keep that as pre-financing, and then at periodic intervals we would have interim payments. In each of those interim payments we would be compensating for all the incurred eligible costs without taking into account that pre-financing. So that 30% would remain with the awarded consortium, so that they are able to have liquidity to then be able to do that financial support to third parties. And at the end, and then we could be, so the consortium could receive up to 90% of the overall budget before the end of the project, and then at the end of the project, 10% or even or more, whatever is remaining from the overall grant. Next slide. So that's for budget preparation. Then when you are writing the proposal, you have a page limit that is quite tight, and you will not be able to develop everything in detail, but we would like you to really try to define as much as possible your conceptual approach. In the next slide, I will explain you some of the elements that we would want you to incorporate in that conceptual approach, but also bear in mind that we really recommend you to have an early deliverable to define the exact workings of the structure, the calls, etc. You can create an inception report in the early stages of the project where we will kind of define many of the things a bit more precisely. Next slide. But in the conceptual approach, what are the things that you may want to consider kind of clarifying in your proposal? First, you can define different frequencies for the calls. So it can be basically an open call with different cutoff dates, several calls, thematic calls, different technological calls. I mean, it's up to you to see what is the frequency and the focus of the different calls. The other aspect that you may want to clarify would be what is the type and the collaboration arrangements with experts. You can also try to define what would be for you the role of the help desks versus a central kind of energy communities facility structure. What kind of peer-to-peer exchanges you think would be useful, and at what stage, and how to organize those. You would need to see how standard you want the support for communities to be, and that means whether you want a single type of lump sum or several, but also what kind of support will you provide in terms of thematic focus as well. You can also define the criteria to select third parties applying, and you have already in the text some indication of those, but you can add, of course, more selection criteria. There's also, as I said, indication of the structure of business plans, but you are also welcome to add a few elements if you think that there's something missing. The weight of the different complementary activities also is up to you. We've created a list of what we think should be included, but of course you are free to select, to decide which one is most important, and kind of emphasize that in your proposal. How will you ensure quality? What are the target groups for you in terms of communication and capacity building? How will the pre-feasibility stage work? What kind of applications, etc.? How will your evaluation process look like? Who will be assessing the proposals? What methods? What tools? All that you could kind of define in your proposal. And also, how would you propose to complement the existing support mechanism? So a lot of things to define, very limited space. Try to really stay at cover as much as possible, and define, have a rather precise idea of what you want to do, so that you can cover all this. Next slide. Also, you would need to define a timeline, and this, of course, you know that at grant agreement preparation stage, this could be kind of rediscussed, but we would like you to already come up with a timeline that is as realistic as possible, particularly considering the overall duration. You need to know that basically setting up, making such a structure start, so only kind of the period to the launch of the calls could be long, because you will need to really create a machinery, and so you need to bear that in mind when you define your timeline. You can also define the time to grant for the second level of support. You would also need to take into account, how long will the pre-screening take, what will be the period that you would advise for the business plan development, what would be the type of quality check, how long should the quality check take. You have to take into account all that when you define your timeline, so that it's credible. So please take into account the different elements here. I will not go through all of them, but please consider those. Next slide. Coming to the end, so get ready to apply. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as you know, the deadline is the 16th of November. So basically, you do have the time to create a very strong consortium. I already mentioned the overall budget is 10 million. What we would foresee is that the contract, so that the grant starts in the autumn of 2024. Yeah, and you will, yeah, and that's it for this slide. Co-financing rate, I've already mentioned. Next slide. Next slide. Where to find a bit more information. So please read the topic text, and not only the topic text. So basically, if you have questions, you can address them to our functional mailbox, but also questions that have been asked by other potential applicants will be published. So check the topic text, but also check the frequently asked questions, because they may address some of the doubts that you have as well. And here because you will receive the slide, you also have the links to places where you can find all the other things related to your proposal, to your application, like admissibility, eligibility conditions, award criteria, etc. So next slide. I have here put some names of some of the projects that on energy communities that we're currently supporting. These are very different to the kind of project that you would be applying, that you would be creating, but they have developed a lot of useful resources for energy communities. So you may be able to then, when you are thinking about the way in which your help desk is going to work, or the way in which the screening will work, some of the resources developed by those may be useful. So this is just for information. Next slide. Next slide, please. And yeah, just the last comment would be that when you are preparing your application, you are encouraged to basically contact your live national contact points, because they can give you advice and help answer your questions. If they can't, then of course you are welcome to address the questions directly to us. And I think that with that, I will close, and I will wish you good luck for your applications, and of course happy to answer any questions that may emerge now.
Thanks a lot, Talia, for this very comprehensive presentation of this new topic on the energy communities facilities. So as you see, we are trying to set up a facility that will deliver financial support to third parties in the form of grants, lump sum grants, that will help the early stages of community development. That is where we see that there are many energy community projects that are potentially good, potentially impactful, but that because of the hassle at the beginning of the early stages, they don't materialize. So this is what the barrier that we want to address with this facility. We have some time for a questions and answers session. I recall you can put your question in slido.com with the code of the event that it's hashtag EULive23. So we have here some questions. Let me have a look. So we can start with the first question on the screen. The question is, could you confirm the duration of the contract? Talia, is something that you can reply?
That's something, so the overall duration is for consortia to define. So there's no fixed duration, but probably I think the average duration of LiveSet projects is between 2 and 3 years. I think in this case, probably you would be looking at a bit of a longer timeline, probably because of that kind of length of the setup of the machinery of a kind of a call, of an evaluation process for the financial support, etc. So probably it's up to you to define, but it would be probably a bit longer than the regular LiveSet project, basically.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I mean, 2 years will be too short. Just to set up the machinery and to start launching the first call for delivering the financial support to third parties will take a bit of time. So definitely a 2-year project will be very short. So yes, minimum is a 3 year. It could be even longer. An example that we can take, it's the CET's facility. And I think in this case, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably 3 or 4 years per project. Yeah. How many? Sorry.
I think it's 4 years.
4 years project. Yeah. Okay. Good. Another question. Yeah, the second one. So how many projects are going to be approved? It seems that the topic expects just one project to be approved at a pan-European level.
Yes, there will be only one awardee. Yes, I mean, it's a different call from the ones we've had in the past where we were supporting different initiatives. This year, we really want to focus on one structure. Yeah.
Yes, so the budget, as Talia said, is 10 million. 70% of that budget should go to the financial support to third parties, and we expect only one because will not make sense to support several structures, but it's only as a pan-European structure, an energy communities facility at the European level. So it's only one indeed. Next question. Yeah, what is the minimum amount of funding that should be given as financial support to third parties? I think you mentioned it, Talia, in your presentation. Maybe you can clarify it. Yeah.
I mean, it can, the level between zero, no, but between 1 and 60,000 euros is for you to define. If the question is regarding the individual lump sums, if the question regards with respect to the 10 million overall budget, how much should be given out as financial support to third parties, the answer is that basically the two levels of support, so together the pre-screening and the financial support to third parties together should at least amount to 70% of the overall grant.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. I think that's very clear. And the next question. Do all third parties need to receive the same financial support? I mean, I think you have already answered more or less.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I mean, if you consider that it's more efficient and effective to have a single lump sum, and you want to simplify the process as much as possible, you can argue that in your proposal and just fix one level of support for all third parties, that's fine. But if you consider that you want to do 2 types, for instance, of grants or more, you can argue any kind of level of financial support within the limits of the 60K. Yeah.
Okay, so I think here the important thing will be to find the right balance between giving tailored support to different needs of different type of communities and the transaction cost of managing calls that are very different in nature. So up to the proposals to find a good strategy and to convince the evaluators that it's the right way. The next question, so I read it from the screen. Do you expect a focus on some countries, priority countries, or applicants from all over the EU have the same chance to win? communities. I don't know here if the question is you mean about the consortiums who will run the facility, or about the calls that the facility will launch and implement. So Talia, if maybe you can clarify it. I think
both.
both.
So for the consortium, there's no preference. So it could come from any part of Europe, and there's no priority area, of course. I mean, the people setting up the structure could come from anywhere. Of course, whomever applies would need to demonstrate that they have a good network of national experts able to provide tailored support in the different territories of the EU. Then regarding the kind of the focus in some countries, there could be, and in some kind of initiatives delivering cascade funding, there are, for instance, regional calls, and this could be part of your strategy regarding the calls and the applications. That's fine, but there is not. I mean, we don't expect you to select a few countries and just focus on those. No, but you could have specific calls for a region, for instance, aggregating several countries.
Yeah, I guess the proposal will have to justify if they do regional calls, or the strategies to do more calls in a specific region, the reason why and the rationale before that. That choice.
And in any case, there should be opportunities to apply for all regions of Europe. So you could not have, even though you may do regional calls, you could not do regional calls only in 2 regions. You would need to try to cover the overall, the continent list.
The idea is an European facility, so you should give support at least to opportunities for support for all regions in the EU, and it's focused on the EU, not outside EU. But the consortium will set up the facility, as Talia said. There is no priority countries with the minimal eligibility criteria for that for this topic. That is 3 partners from 3 different eligible countries. Yeah. Next question. Do you expect external advisors to validate the selection of beneficiaries communities?
Yeah, so basically there's no rule, but you would need to define a process that, as I said, meets EU standards regarding absence of conflict of interest, transparency, confidentiality, etc. And maybe using external experts could be one way of achieving that, but it's up to you to define the process and convince us that it's meeting EU standards. So it's for you to define that in the proposal.
Okay, very good. Then I have a questions here from Mona and Fritz, the last one on the slide that says the facility is not expected to make any kind of revenues nor to become self-sufficient after the live funding has run out, correct?
No, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it's correct. There's not an expectations to be self-sufficient. Okay, no. Next question. The call mentions the need to keep the legacy work performed under the repository and advisory hub services that were presented by our colleague from DG Energy, Achille. Will the consortium have to use the same website?
That's a very detailed question. Probably we would need to create a new domain under Europa. But in any case, the idea is that if we create a new domain, that we transfer key outputs both from RECA and the repository to the new website of the facility, so that the compendium of the relevant work of those 2 initiatives is transferred forward to the facility. Yeah.
Okay. So there will be a facility website, and we'll try to see how to make the link with the main elements of the repository and the advisory hub. Okay, very good. I see we have the time to answer most of the questions. That's good. So we'll go to the next question. Could the energy community be placed in an industrial area for industrial purposes, or should it be set up in a residential area for only citizens' use?
I mean, I think that this is a question for which you would need to go back to the definitions of renewable energy communities and citizens energy communities, and provided that your initiative, your project would fit into those, then you would be eligible. Yeah, but it's varies.
Yeah. Of course, the call for grants delivery under the energy facility that will describe the type of support that will be given and the type of communities that we are expecting to support. But of course, provided they are compliant with the definitions of renewable energy communities and citizen energy communities according to the EU legislation. Okay, the next question. Is there a way for SMEs interested in the call to match potential partners consortium? Is there a matchmaking possible between complementary players?
We don't foresee a matchmaking event. After, I think there is a B2Match possibilities after this info day. And there you could check in the platform the profiles of different actors and propose meetings to people that you may consider relevant. But we are not organizing a matchmaking for this call for proposals.
Yeah, that's very clear. And the last question, to follow up on the website question, the facility website will have to operate under Europa. Is that correct?
Yes, that's Commission's policy.
No, but it's a grant.
Yes, but I think these kind of initiatives, we would probably want them to have a website in the Europa domain, like the repository and RECA. I think that was the kind of the initial idea, but it's not fixed. It's not set in stone. Maybe Achille, you can also address this question, but I think that's my understanding so far.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Talia. No further comments.
Okay, well, I think it's not, yeah, we'll have to see, it's not set on stone because will have to see how this is feasible for a grant, because normally, yes, tenders and service contracts operate in Europa, but normally grants have their own websites. So we'll have to see how this is possible, but it's not fundamental to be solved right now. Okay. Yes, I don't know if there's more questions from the Slido backup office. That our colleague Sower Williers is managing the Slido from the back office. I think there are no more questions, she's telling me. So I think we are just perfectly on time. I'm amazed by the timekeeping of the session. So I hope you enjoyed the session today on the new topic on the energy community facility, and that the presentation will give you a bit food for thought in case you want to do a proposal. As I said, it's a very special animal. We are learning from the success of the CET facility that we launched some years ago, and we try to replicate this model for the benefit of the boosting of energy communities across Europe. So the more traditional support to energy communities in LifeSet with the normal LifeSet topic that we have in 2021 and 2022 this year is not available to be seen for 2024. So I say again, so there's no need to resubmit proposals from the previous call to this topic because the topics are completely different. What I can also mention is that for example, I saw some questions on industrial areas and energy communities. There is a topic on businesses that has a scope on energy cooperation and where is foreseen the cooperation between companies working in proximity, and there is a scope to work on energy communities on that topic as well. And there is a policy topic where we give support to proposals working to help in the implementation of provisions of the Renewables Directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive, and the EPBD. And under the scope of the Renewables Directive, there are provisions, there is some priority for proposals to work on energy communities and, for example, different governance models or definitions of renewable energy communities that comply with the RES directive definition, or also a bit of the interaction between RECs and SECs and heating and flexibility services, for example. So there's a scope under the policy topic for policy work around energy communities as well. So that's all from my side. So that's the end of our parallel session and also the end of the info day, the live set info day today. I hope you enjoyed the info day. If you were able to participate in several parallel sessions and also in the plenary session this morning. All the information will be available in CENEA website, the recordings of the sessions and the PowerPoints. You have a lot of information as well in the participant portals, and you have the list of national contact points that can help you in case you have doubts, and also the functional mailbox of LiveSet in case you have more questions. And we will be publishing frequently asked questions. So basically, when we get questions from you, we'll reply, but we also publish them as frequently asked questions so that all proposals have the same amount of information for preparing their proposal. And then with that, I can only wish you all the luck if you are thinking about preparing a proposal for this specific topic or for any other topic in the LiveSet. So we are looking forward to getting all your proposals. And I wish you the best for the rest of the day. And I thank you again for to the participants of today, to Sheila and to Vera from the Energy for the contribution and setting up the policy support. And of course to Talia Brun, who's been the head behind from the CENEA side about this new initiative, and she will be driving the topic on energy communities facility in the future. So thanks a lot. That's all from my side, and thanks again.